author of the Section 42A report. There's a couple of little bits of housekeeping. If you need the toilets or anything like that, they're out the door and turn right at the end of the corridor. If an alarm goes off or anything, the assembly point is out in the car park. There's, I suppose, if we start running, you can follow us. Other than that, if you are speaking, it would be great if you could turn the microphones on so that we can have the voice recording happen. And other than that, we're good to go.
Just with the microphones, yeah, push them to turn them on and you've got the green light, and then if you could push them again when you're not speaking to turn them off, because there can be some issues if there's multiple mics on at once. So
thank you. Right. Ms. McIntosh, is there anything by way of sort of administration or to do with the hearing other than your subs that you want to tell us about before I hand over to Mrs. West? No. Okay. Thank you. All right. So you're a submitter, and as I understand, you live up on Bruntwood Road. Is that right? That's right. Okay. So obviously we have your written submission, but over to you to present. Thank you.
Thank you for accommodating me today. Okay, my name is Jane West of 66 Bruntwood Road, Cambridge, and I represent myself and others on Bruntwood Road. We have been invited here by the Waipa District Council, who acknowledge and confirm we are directly affected. We, as neighbours, look directly at the Hautapu Landowners Group industrial development, which we initially opposed. We submit the early rezoning of the Hautapu Landowners Group land from deferred industrial to live industrial should wait for the agreed triggers of 80% development of the Karma Trust land or the 2030 deadline, as originally planned, to ensure orderly development. This was agreed to when the Hautapu Landowners Group applied for and were granted the change in zoning from rural to deferred industrial. It is disingenuous to so quickly ask for this condition in the agreement to now be wiped. The application for an accelerated fast forward of the development will undoubtedly entail inadequate provision of water, wastewater, transport and environmental plans and provisions. Our environment will suffer, particularly the Manganoni stream. It will also have a social impact on the neighbours, farms and animals. We are a neighbourhood of dairy and equine farms, as well as lifestyle and residential properties. We are already heavily impacted by the industrial development on Hautapu Road, before the Karma development even has operating industries, then to be followed by the Hautapu Landowners Group industries. We are impacted with loud noise from the Hautapu welders and major light spill from all the industries. A senior council planner informed me there are no council checks on industrial buildings once they have gone up to ensure the lighting is regulated unless there is a complaint. Regulations are not checked and the neighbourhood bears the consequences. We also suffer major visual pollution with no discernible screening, and our properties are devalued. Council notification irregularities with the Hautapu Landowners Group does not justify this application to fast forward this deferred industrial development. The domino effect means they are imposing the same significant effects they are complaining of onto us. We would now have to live at an earlier date with what the Hautapu Landowners Group are complaining about today. The domino effect of all of this on Class 1 land gives little faith in the Waipa District Council's long-term plan. It seems to the public that with the right planner on board, it is of little value. Perhaps we could name another stream boundary, or perhaps our farm could become the next Bruntwood village. We suggest you do not grant this application to make the industrial development live in the name of orderly development and to be socially responsible and give the neighbours a chance in those years to plan their futures. Two wrongs don't make a right and gives us no faith in the Waipa Council, District Council planning. The domino effect means the Hautapu landowners group are doing to us what they are complaining about today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. West. That was very clear. Obviously, you've raised a number of issues there, which it's not my job to answer, thankfully, but I'm certainly aware of the fact that the evidence that has been provided by others has addressed some of those matters, definitely. What would be the distance between where you are and the proposed boundary of the industrial zone along the Mangaoni stream?
Probably a couple of 100 metres.
Right, okay. So you haven't got a direct interface, but nevertheless, some of the effects that
We
you
look
talked about.
directly across a couple of paddocks, basically, at everything that's going on. And hence, that's why we get all these other side effects of industrial development, like the light spill. Nothing ever gets, done about that. All the talk about screening, etc., that takes 20 years for bush to grow. It's all irrelevant, really, for the current residents of our road.
Right. All right, well, I've certainly heard what you've got to say.
Very
You
much.
had a written statement there.
I do, I can give it to
Can
you.
you
Yes.
provide that to admin, and they will
Thank you very
provide
much.
some copies for me?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Ms. McIntosh.
Thank you, Sue. It's working fine. My name's Marion McIntosh. I'm counsel for the requester for the private plan change, the Hautapu Landowners Group. These submissions are presented on behalf of the group, who are the proponents of this private plan change. The request seeks that the current deferred industrial zoning of Area 7 within the Hautapu Land Industrial Zone is changed to live industrial zone. This process follows the earlier Plan Change 17 process, the outcome of which rezoned Area 7 to a deferred industrial zoning. There is essentially one outstanding issue between the applicant, the Waipa District Council, and the Karma Trust, based on the evidence, and the Karma Trust, the owner of Area 6. That is that the triggers in Rule 15.4.2.xx as to when subdivision and development may occur within Area 7. In effect, these triggers determine the activity status for an application for subdivision and development, should this be live zoned industrial. If the trigger event has occurred, any application will be classed as a restricted discretionary activity. Based on the Section 42A report and the evidence for the Karma Trust, there is no opposition to the proposal for a live industrial zoning for Area 7, save for the dispute or the tension regarding those triggers in that rule. The matters raised in submissions have been comprehensively addressed through the Section 42A report. And in that regard, I note that the question of highly productive land and the statutory test for rezoning of Area 7, insofar as the National Policy Statement on highly productive land are concerned, were addressed through PC 17, and there's no need to revisit that through this process. Mr. Crisp essentially concurs with the Section 42A author, except for the proposed amendment to Rule 15.4.2.xx. I think I might just refer to that as the rule. And if there's another rule I refer to, I'll list the full narration for that. Accordingly, these submissions focus on the issue of triggers in that rule. including the proposal for a third trigger, which is the express reference to the vesting of Road 4. I will briefly comment on the regulatory framework, given that the 42A report provides a comprehensive assessment of PC 33 against those statutory tests. As explained in the evidence of Mr Hawthorne, Mr Gunderson and Mr Crisp, the landowner group has been through a long and trying process to get to this point. I don't intend to dwell on that history, except to say that it has been extremely stressful for the members and their families. The processes that the group has participated in, from the notification of PC 17 through till now, along with the changes to the environment that they are experiencing, have had significant economic and social effects on those who own and reside within the area, within the land in Area 7. Mr Gunderson and Mr Hawthorne provide some commentary on the level of impacts that they are the subject of through the development of Area 6. Mr Hawthorne has effectively lost his horse adjustment business, and Mr Gunderson's family no longer enjoy the lifestyle they came to the Waikato and Cambridge to enjoy. Those effects were anticipated by both in their evidence on PC 17 and are now being played out. They, together with the other members of the landowner group, took a pragmatic approach and pursued the deferred industrial zoning of Area 7 through PC 17. Since that time, the landowner group has resolved to prepare a request for this private plan change to enable a live zoning of Area 7. The landowner group understands the need for an integrated approach to the development of the Hautapu industrial zone. That is, the rollout of development of Area 6 to be followed by Area 7. However, the landowner group is concerned to ensure that there is sufficient certainty for the timing of the development of Area 7. And in practical terms, that means that the market needs to have a clear signal that Area 7 can be developed within a known timeframe. In turn, that provides economic efficiencies and supports the integrated development of the two areas. The question of timing essentially depends on the provision of one piece of critical infrastructure, and that's the vesting of Road 4 through Area 6 to the boundary of Area 7. There is no dispute, as between the council and the landowner group witnesses, that matters relating to transportation, three waters and economics are appropriately addressed. While there is some tension between council's economic expert, Mr Heath, regarding the proposed earlier trigger date, which I'll address further later in submissions, both are essentially aligned in their opinion that there's no economic reason why Area 7 cannot be live zoned industrial zone. Transportation. Mr Inder prepared the transportation memorandum in support of PC 33 when it was lodged with the council. This referred to his evidence for PC 17, in which he recommended that Road 4 be extended to the Area 6, Area 7 boundary to future-proof the ability for Area 7 to develop and to avoid the need for access onto Peak Road from Area 7. That recommendation was accepted by the hearing panel in its decision on PC 17 and is shown on the Hautapu structure plan. Council's transportation engineer, Mr Hudson, agrees that there are no significant transport effects arising from the vesting of Road 4 and the use of it by Area 7 as a live industrial zone. As explained in the 42A report and noted in the evidence for the landowner group, Road 4, as shown in the Hautapu industrial structure plan, is a critical piece of infrastructure necessary to enable the industrial activities within Area 7. I think it's obvious that it provides the direct access onto Hautapu Road. It also provides the area through which servicing infrastructure for Area 7 will be located. Mr Inder notes that the design for the Hautapu Road, Victoria Road roundabout has been revised by the council to provide a dual lane roundabout, and he supports that design change. He also concurs with the conclusions reached by Mr Macleay in his 42A report and with the comments from Mr Hudson for the council. In short, there are no transportation reasons why the live industrial zoning of Area 7 should not occur, provided Road 4 is vested to provide a road corridor from Hautapu Road through to Area 7. The landowner group was therefore concerned to learn that the original application for subdivision and land use consent lodged on behalf of Karma Trust did not propose or show Road 4 connecting to the boundary of Area 7. However, that was amended and the current subdivision and land use consent granted on the 3rd of April of this year includes a condition requiring the vesting of Road 4 in its entirety. Given the importance of Road 4 in regard to transportation effects and the integration of development between the two areas, Mr Crisp has proposed an amendment to the rule to include an additional trigger for subdivision and development of Area 7. That is, that the activity status would become restricted discretionary as opposed to non-complying. And that additional trigger is the vesting of Road 4 in its entirety with a cross-reference to the relevant rule, which is Rule 15.4.2 WW. In my submission, given the progress of development within Area 6 since PC 17 was made operative, the better understanding of how infrastructure will be provided across Area 6 and Area 7, and the requirement for Road 4 to vest as prescribed in proposed Rule 15.4.2 WW, it is appropriate that this additional trigger be included in the structure plan. The transportation evidence emphasises the need to retain that rule, and I've set out the rule in full there. As acknowledged in the 42A report, the landowner group opposed Karma Trust's submission that the rule be deleted on the basis that it is necessary to avoid a potential lockout of Area 7. However, I note since evidence exchange and Mr Moran's evidence for the Karma Trust, he suggests that if the rule is to remain, it ought to be amended to reflect the current subdivision consent. Karma Trust has completed stage 1 and is now implementing or giving effect to stage 2. Both stages were authorised under the single application and single subdivision consent. However, that is not yet complete. The 42A report states that the vesting in council of the entire length of Road 4 is an outcome that is expected to occur and which has been secured through Karma Trust's approved subdivision consent. In the event that the trust subdivision does not proceed, retention of that rule ensures that Area 7 will not be landlocked and that no vehicle access to Area 7 occurs from Peak Road. Considering the above, Rule 15.4.2 must remain. The current subdivision by the Karma Trust has not been completed. Circumstances may change and such contingency should be considered in determining the rules in PC 33. If the Commissioner is minded to amend the rule to clarify that the first subdivision referred to in Rule 15.4.2 WW includes one which is staged, the landowner group would not oppose that.
Ms McIntosh, can I just ask a question about, just remind me what happens when a survey plan goes to the DLR together with the sign off from the council, 223 sign off.
Yeah.
Is the vesting of the road a separable process than the titling of the land, or does the land, do the lots all have to be titled, and that also
Yes.
leads to the vesting of the road? You can't have the vesting of the road and the land just sort of sits as it was.
Yes, so as under the current subdivision, the vesting of the road, it's shown as a separate lot, and it's anticipated that at 224C, when the documentation is lodged with the Registrar General with Linz, that is the point at which the road will be vested. So at 223, you're probably familiar with this, that's when the scheme plan's lodged with the council gives sign off that the conditions are being complied with. That must happen under normal circumstances within the 5-year lapse date of a consent. And then once that has occurred and 223 certification has come from the council, there is a hard time deadline of a further 3 years to then lodge with LINZ. I think the concern is that, and all things going to plan as they currently are, then there's every expectation that the current subdivision will occur as per what has been consented. If something completely unforeseen happens and that is not implemented completely, and there's a change to either the landowner or potentially to the subdivision that amends that layout, that's why I think that rule is important to remain. Or I'm going to get to the trigger rule later in submissions, but I think that's the primary concern, that if anything unforeseen were to occur and that subdivision that is currently granted for some reason doesn't happen as it is currently intended, then there is a very clear message and a rule in the plan that says whoever does that first subdivision needs to ensure that that road is vested.
Right, and if it wasn't the case that Karma Trust were doing any subdivision at the moment, then the rule is, the trigger defaults to the date that is set, whether it's 2030 or 2027.
Yes, or the 80%. Yeah.
And at that stage, the landowners group, given that there was no Road 4 vested, they would need to resort to.
There would have to be some sort of an alternative, and I think something fairly significant would have occurred for that to be necessary.
But there is there is an assumption that land in Area 6 is going to be developed. But if it,
yes.
But that's just like a historic expectation, if you like. I mean, if that wasn't the case, then we're simply relying on the date.
Yes, if Area 4 wasn't developed, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, if Area 6 wasn't developed, we wouldn't be here because that plan change wouldn't have happened and the landowner group wouldn't have been involved. So
Right.
I think that's where we're at.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no doubt that will that sort of relationship, I think, is probably at the core of this.
Yes, and I mean, Mr. Chris will be able to discuss this further when he gives his evidence, but when those original triggers were discussed and proposed, and that's what landed in PC 17, I don't think the degree of importance of Road 4 was necessary front and centre. And having read the evidence for the transportation experts and the importance of the integration between the two areas, it was obvious to Mr. Crispin, to myself, that it seemed logical that that trigger rule would also include a reference to that road.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. And so just to conclude there's no transportation reason why the deferred zoning of Area 7 should not be uplifted to live industrial. Three Waters, Mr. Dickey for the landowner group provides evidence that Three Waters considerations are addressed and there is no reason why Area 7 should not be live zoned. As explained in section 3 of his evidence, the change to the location of the wastewater pump station as shown on the Hautapu structure plan by Karma Trust and its resource consent means that the approach to wastewater management within Area 7 requires amendment from that which was anticipated through PC 17, and a separate wastewater pump station for Area 7 may be necessary. In that regard, Mr. Dickey agrees with the council's engineer that whether that is necessary or not can be addressed at the time of resource consent. Mr. Dickey agrees with the conclusions of the Section 42A report regarding Three Waters and confirms there is no Three Waters reason why the area should not be live zoned industrial. Economics. Mr. Heath for the landowner group states that given the deferred status of Area 7, the key economic consideration is not whether the site is suitable for industrial use, but rather the economic efficiency and appropriateness of advancing its development in light of recent industrial market trends and any relevant economic costs. His industrial market update analysis indicates the industrial growth in the Cambridge Karapiro market is exceeding the forecasts outlined in the Future-Proof Business Development Capacity Assessment. He further notes that the Cambridge Karapiro area, and in particular Hautapu, has strategic locational advantages such as proximity to the Waikato Expressway and will therefore continue to elevate its position as a key industrial hub within the sub-region. The analysis highlights the significant gap between project and actual industrial land demand and reinforces the economic and market requirements and justification for PC 33. That is the change from deferred to live industrial zoning. There's an orphan sentence there that's a typo, an error that should be deleted. The benefit of this live industrial zone is outlined in paragraph 35, where Mr. Heath explains why, from an economic perspective, the benefits of live zoning Area 7 would likely significantly outweigh the associated economic costs. And I set out his conclusion. The market economics report appended to the Section 42A report essentially concurs with this. It states that while the rezoning of PC 33 is not necessary at this time, given the substantial pipeline of industrial capacity already available in Cambridge and across the district, enabling live zoning of Area 7 would not in itself generate significant adverse economic impacts. From a practical perspective, allowing the zoning to transition without the need for multiple future plan change processes and associated appeals could reduce costs and administrative burdens for both council and ratepayers. The market economics assessment supports the retention of 2030 as the alternative trigger to that of 80% of Area 6 being the subject of Section 224C. Mr. Heath does not agree that there is an economic reason why that should be constrained to 2030, why the development of Area 7 should be constrained to 2030. However, that should be considered in the context of the need for Road 4 and the function and purpose of the trigger rule. As noted above, the date trigger for restricted discretionary activity status for an application to subdivide and develop Area 7, so it's a typo, is a matter for determination by the Commissioner. In any event, both the Council's 42A report and the economic evidence for the landowner group supports the live industrial zoning of Area 7. Development triggers. The trigger rule determines the activity status for subdivision and development of Area 7. There is no dispute about the 80% subject to 224C in Area 6. PC 33 as lodged seeks a fallback trigger date of 31 March 2027. The Council and Karma Trust do not agree and maintain that the date of 31 March 2030 is an appropriate date. And Mr. Crisp proposes an additional trigger expressly referencing the vesting of Road 4. As I've just addressed the Commissioner, the consistent feature in all the evidence and technical analysis is that the critical point for Area 7 is the vesting of Road 4. And in my submission, the addition of that trigger is appropriate and reflects the importance of that infrastructure for both Area 7 and Area 6. It also addresses the possibility, albeit remote, that the current subdivision and development of Area 6 is not completed or is subject to some sort of unforeseen change of circumstances, which could raise the question as to whether the 80% has been achieved. For example, if there's a change to the way that the subdivision's laid out and there's a question arises of whether it's 75%, 70% or it's 80%. Moreover, the proposed addition of the Road 4 vesting trigger links with Rule 1542 WW. Moreover, it links Rule 1542 WW to the trigger rule that sets out the criteria for Area 7. In my submission, it is a clear and certain criteria for an applicant and the council to determine activity status for the subdivision and development in Area 7. The trigger date of 2030 is somewhat arbitrary and potentially redundant. It is a point in time by which Road 4 should certainly have been vested in the council. As Mr. Crisp points out in his evidence, based on the current stage of the Area 6 consent implementation, it's reasonable to expect that it would be vested by 27. And a key factor for the landowner group, particularly Mr. Gunderson and Mr. Hawthorne, is the market perception and that the date trigger had some relevance in that respect. The minutiae of activity status for a resource consent application for Area 7 may not be easily communicated, whereas a date is. However, considering those matters and since evidence exchange, the applicant and its planning witness have reflected on the relevance and implications of that date. In short, the landowner group and Mr. Crisp accept that regardless of the date trigger, Road 4 remains the critical piece of infrastructure that must be in place. On that basis, with the additional trigger of the vesting of Road 4, the landowner group does not oppose the date of 31 March 2030. And Mr. Crisp will address that when he gives the evidence. So in summary, there's no dispute that the trigger rule must include the 80% development lodgement of 224C of Area 6. However, for certainty and to be consistent with Rule 1542 WW, it should include an additional trigger referencing the vesting of Road 4. And for completeness, at paragraph 40, I've set out the position for the landowner group. That includes the additional trigger that was proposed by Mr. Crisp in his evidence and shows the change to 31 March 2030. A consequential amendment to Appendix S1 Future Growth Cells, Cambridge Hautapu Industrial Growth Cells, anticipated now to 2035, would be necessary to ensure consistency. That's a follow-through amendment. As Mr. Crisp states in his evidence, the proposed amendment to the trigger rule is consistent with the policies of and gives effect to the objectives of the Hautapu Industrial Zone and is consistent with the relevant provisions of the Regional Policy Statement and future-proof. I'll just briefly cover the regulatory framework. I think that's been well and truly traversed in the 42A report and the application. Mr. Crisp concurs with the assessment in the 42A report and notes that the additional trigger of in the trigger rule that is proposed does not change the assessment against the statutory criteria. And on that basis, the zoning of Area 7 as live industrial zone under Plan Change 33, including the proposed amendment to Rule 1542XX, gives effect to the relevant provisions of the NPS UD, is consistent with the NPS highly productive land, gives effect to the Waikato Regional Policy Statement, including Change 1, aligns with the future-proof development strategy and the Waipa 2050 growth strategy, is consistent with Te Ture Whaimana o Te Awa o Te Waikato, which is given effect to through the RPS, does not raise any issues in respect of the joint management agreement between the council and the relevant iwi and mana whenua, is consistent with the purpose of the Waipa District Plan, gives effect to the relevant objectives and implements the relevant policies of the Waipa District Plan, is consistent with Part 2 of the RMA and achieves the purpose of the Act. So to conclude, the evidence for the landowner group demonstrates that Area 7 should be rezoned from deferred industrial zone to live industrial zone. The plan change will implement the relevant policy of the district plan and achieve its objectives and is consistent with Part 2 and achieves its purpose. The 42A report supports the live industrial zoning, subject to the development triggers, including the 31 March 2030 date. And as I said earlier in submissions, the landowner group does not oppose that on the basis that the road for vesting is included in the trigger. That amendment does not affect the assessment of PC 33 pursuant to the RMA regulatory framework, nor does it undermine the Area 6 development that is currently underway or its integration with Area 7. Accordingly, the rezoning of Area 7 to industrial zone should be confirmed and the amendments to the Waipa District Plan set out in Appendix 1 and Appendix 2 of the Section 42A report be made, subject to the additional clause proposed for the trigger rule and the consequential change to Appendix S1. And that concludes my legal submissions. Although there wasn't a lot of case law in there.
Just on the rule WW, back at your paragraph 21,
Yes,
in that final sentence, you say if the commissioner is minded to amend the rule. Would you have some wording for that you could suggest? So this is in relation to, as I understand it.
that the
Has the
subdivision's in two
yeah.
stages.
Yeah, has the first subdivision actually happened and does the rule need to be amended to? that.
It might be as simple as saying that first subdivision bracket, including a staged subdivision, or whether the subdivision is in stages or not, or something along those, something to that effect.
So as I understand, the subdivision at the moment is a staged subdivision. It's
Yes.
one subdivision that is staged.
Yes,
Right. So it's the first subdivision. There's no question that.
and I think there's probably potentially some ambiguity in that, because the definition of subdivision means when 224C's completed. So the first stage has completed 224C, but stage 2 hasn't. But the first subdivision, as granted by the council, is in 2 stages. So I can understand why there is some concern that could probably be clarified further. And that's why I've suggested some wording that refers to first subdivision, whether staged or otherwise.
Okay, well, some words would be helpful if you want to suggest something.
It
Not
might-
on the trot.
I think it might be worthwhile if Mr. Crift considers that
Yes.
over the break, and depending on the position of Karma Trust, there may be some discussion between him and Mr. Moran around that, just based on the evidence of Mr. Moran, where he said that he made that comment that if it is to remain, then an amendment would be appropriate.
Right. Okay, well, that's fine. I haven't any further questions for you.
Thank you. So now. Okay. I wonder, sir, if we could hear from Mr. Dickey first, because he's attending online.
That's fine, yes.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you. All right, so kia ora. I'm just checking that you can hear me.
Yes,
Fine.
we can hear you loud and clear, Mr. Dickey. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you, and thank you to the team for allowing me to join virtually today. So I'm Matthew Dickey. I'm a principal civil and Three Waters engineer and director at BTW, and have over 14 years of experience in Three Waters assessment and design. I'll take my evidence as read today and summarise key points relating to the Three Waters servicing of Area 7. Overall, and as outlined by Ms McIntosh, my Three Waters assessment work and evidence presented in relation to Area 7 at the PC17 hearing remains relevant and applicable for supporting live zoning of Area 7 in Plan Change 33. I agree with Mr McLean's Section 42A report regarding Three Waters conclusions and recommendations, and confirm that there are no Three Waters servicing reasons why Area 7 should not be uplifted to a live industrial zone. I'll just highlight sort of 2 items from my evidence which are detailed within Section 3. So the wastewater pump station location, which was shown on the Hautapu industrial structure plan area, and also reflected in the proposed Area 7 structure plan, has changed location in the approved Karma Trust subdivision plans. This has moved approximately 200 metres to the east of the structure plan location, which for Area 7, there's 2 options around wastewater servicing from Area 7 to the new wastewater pump station. Those plausible options are gravity servicing or a new pump station within Area 7, which would pump through a rising main up to the Karma Trust gravity network. So the adjustment in the wastewater pump station does not necessarily preclude the gravity option, but would make it a lot more difficult to achieve. So with that change, it's likely that Area 7 would need a new dedicated wastewater pump station, which would, from my opinion, would be a more costly piece of infrastructure to install and then also maintain for council. So that was sort of one key aspect of key point of my evidence. The second point is relating to stormwater. So since the PC17 hearing, a geotechnical investigation has been undertaken for Area 7, which was completed in September 2024. And that investigation confirmed the soakage rate selection for the Area 7 structure plan, stormwater basin design. So essentially that gives confidence to the stormwater basin sizing in my PC17 evidence. So I guess overall, there's no Three Waters servicing issues with Area 7, and in terms of Area 7, there's no reason why uplifting of a live industrial zone from a Three Waters lens couldn't be completed. So short and sweet my end, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dickey. No, I didn't have any questions for you. I guess the main thing was that you were satisfied that change in the location of the pump station down on Hautapu Road was able to be addressed potentially still by gravity or maybe by an additional pump. So if you're satisfied on that score, then I have no questions for you. So thank you.
Nice. Yeah, I'm satisfied that definitely the pump station option is viable. So it gives a solution there. The gravity would be more difficult, but I guess pending the engineering plans from Karma Trust, could still be viable.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And the next witness for the landowner group is Mr. Dean Hawthorne. Mr. Hawthorne's just going to provide a very brief summary.
Good morning. I'm Dean Hawthorne, one of the landowners within Area 7.
Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne.
I just like to emphasise the frustration that we're experiencing and what this situation has brought upon not only ourselves but the whole group. You've obviously read the submission we put in earlier. So back in 23 with the PC17 hearing, we illustrated the adverse effects we were probably going to experience ahead of Karma Trust doing Area 6. And now it's begun. Well, we weren't wrong. We've only begun the earthwork stage at this point. It's continuous noise, it's loud. No doubt when it finally stops raining, it's going to be a big bald area that's going to create a lot of dust for us, and it's a massive area of bare land. Where I don't know how many water carts you put across it, it's going to create a lot of dust, and it's right over the fence. Look, there's been no notification either when these earthworks start. They just, you've got to look over the fence to see what's going on. We've never received notification of when earthworks started, and I guess going forward we're not going to receive notification on much else. Once construction starts and whatnot. Like out there, like kids can't even ride their ponies in the paddock now. I think I might have sent through a photo or two of the trucks, those massive trucks and earth movers going up and down. I've explained how our business has been affected in that submission. It's kaput. It was very specialised, and you're also all aware of the original kerfuffle when we were starting to build the house. So I won't go back into that. It's all there. But we're trapped in a triangle, between that gully and it's a triangle between the industrial section and that gully. We're trapped. It's a very narrow area, and the other side of the gully there's actually a lot more distance. So it's about us moving on, really. We've had enough. Our health's being infected, our business has been affected. We just want to move on, and that's why we're asking for this. So if council is sort of wondering why as a group we're a bit jittery, council's original knowledge in days gone past with a different regime of Karma's development through Future Proof behind closed doors, just 7 weeks before issuing a consent. And now recently we found that granting resource consent to move the wastewater pump station without notification. We've been told by our technicians that it's probably going to have a $1.5 to $2 million effect on whoever developed Area 7, so it has affected us. We should have been notified about it. We weren't. That's important. We were told back in 2023, Karma Trust are 80% done, no problem, all good to go. That was 2 years ago. Barriers are still in place. Things change. So we've done, everything that council's asked us along the way. We've gone and done the extra tech work. We've done everything that we've agreed to, peak road closures and things like that. We're just trying to be accommodating to get this going forward. This land's been gone over with a fine-tooth comb. We've had costs we didn't really have. We've managed to find it to complete this process. It's been stressful, and we just need some certainty of time, and then we can go as a group. So we've all been on the same page from day one, and so that's what it's all about. We've had enough. We've been through the ringer on this. So thank you for hearing me.
Well, certainly sense your frustration. Of course, a lot of the things you've brought up relate to implementation of consents, and I'm not charged with dealing with those. That's a matter of the council and lodging complaints and that sort of thing. And I guess you'll be right about the potential for production of generation of dust in the dry months to come as well. So it's another thing for you to deal with. I just want to get something clear on. on the aerial on your evidence, you said that your house is at the extreme bottom right of the farm. Is that, so you had that house site that you had a photo, another photo of?
Yeah,
That was right out on Hautapu Road, was it? Close to the road?
It was right in the very bottom corner of Peak and the Karma Trust boundary.
Yes, okay.
And it was
right.
about, I think the bedroom was 15 metres off the boundary, which was
Yeah.
the maximum setback.
Right.
And obviously you saw the photo of how far we got. And we were pouring concrete Tuesday and the letter came on the weekend. I'm pleased I opened it. So, yeah, so we got a hell of a shock. And yes, and we had to pull up stumps. As mentioned, I won't go into all that again, but we went to the real estate agents, tried to come up with a solution. They said, you're going to do your ass. Pardon my French. But, you know, so we didn't go ahead with it. We had to just suck it up and move on and try and work a way to get out of this. And we want to go on and start another business in the area, you know, whether we can and how quickly we can.
Yeah.
Don't
Well,
know.
I'm sure that will turn out to be the right decision in due course. Just in terms of the amount of work that you've done that will support future development of the land, you were saying you've spent a lot of money on investigations and what have you. If the zoning was live tomorrow and the provisions allowed you to go ahead tomorrow, you know, how far off would you be in terms of lodging consents?
Oh, look, I mean, that's down the track sort of stuff. We want to move on. So that's stuff that we just want to be in the position to be able to do stuff. And we aren't in that position at the moment. If you speak to real estate agents and stuff, you know, we're in no position to do anything. And we've always worked as a group. We want to do something as a group. Because there's lots of land in that area that needs to be planted, and it's all, you know, the riparian stuff all has to be incorporated into the whole area. So, yeah, so I couldn't answer that question because I'm not an expert in how long those processes take.
All right, I haven't got anything else.
Thank
I
you.
can ask you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next witness is Mr. John Gunderson.
Morning, Mr. Gunderson.
Hi, I'm John Gunderson, and I'll keep this relatively brief. I take all my previous written statements as read, and it outlines sort of our situation. Don't want to go over that again. So firstly, just want to endorse Dean's points really about you know, the lack of consultation with us throughout this whole process. There's so many examples of not consulting that is astounding, really, considering our proximity. And so I don't think I need to go into all of the different aspects of that lack of consultation. It's just been a leitmotif throughout the whole process, and it doesn't build trust or confidence in, you know, that's why we seek rules to give us confidence that this will roll out as we expect, but we don't have any confidence that that will be the case because that hasn't been the way that this has operated to date. So having said, my written statement, you know, outlines the key points. I just wanted to make today the point that is, you know, what is different about us, the HLG, and, you know, all I can say is that we're the people that are paying all these experts, and, you know, we're the people that are living on the land, and we're the only ones with properties adjacent to the development, and we're the only ones who what I call collateral damage. We were just the ones who brought in the wrong place at the wrong time. We don't want to be here. Everyone else here aspires to be here. The lawyers and the planners and the experts all trained to be here. We are not developers, and we didn't buy in this location to make money. We bought for lifestyle reasons. So we are not the initiators or the architects of this rezoning. I want you to know what collateral damage feels like. It feels like we're a pawn in a bigger game that we have no control over. It feels like we have no control over our lives anymore. It feels like we're locked into a slow and exhausting and expensive process, and we are stuck in a rundown house not worth investing in. We live next door to noisy diggers and trucks all day and likely to do that for the next 5 years. Being collateral damage is stressful. It's draining, it's disempowering, it's uncertain. It's not knowing if or when we can move on with our lives. We are tired. We have lost family dreams, horse riding dreams. All that's sold and gone. We have foregone holidays. We're planning, that planned, and where money's been spent on experts who are all going on overseas holidays, or we work to pay for it. We get to stay home and listen to the diggers. We have not tried to stop Karma Trust or the council. We have only sought a pragmatic outcome and to be able to move on with our lives. Yet here we are, we're seen as the enemy trying to change the rules. And we just want an outcome which allows us to get on with our lives now and not in 5 years' time. So I know I could whine on about consultation or the lack of it. Why the Karma Trust rezoning wasn't included in our LIM report. As Dean said, it was all undercover and behind closed doors. There's no mitigation, there's movement of wastewater systems without consultation. There's a serious toxic waste dump on our boundary, which is 100 metres from our garden and our chickens and our water bore. So, I could go on about the unfairness of all this and the lack of concern or the poor planning, but to be honest, I just want to go. I want to get on. And, so does my family. So, we seek a safe and fair and timely outcome that's not driven by commercial self-interest.
Thank you. Once again, your feelings about it are palpable, and thank you for coming and sharing that with us. I didn't notice in your statement, when did you purchase your property?
About 4 years ago.
Right. And Mr. Hawthorne?
After.
John, I think, moved in about a month before I got consent to build the house. So it all happened very quickly.
So 3 months after we.
All that was going through future proof as well.
And you've obviously been there a bit longer.
Yeah, I've been there 12 years.
So we bought, and within 3 months, we had the letter from Becca suggesting that this was a fait accompli and that the council and Karma Trust were all agreed that the rezoning was going to happen, and we were unable to stop it, which is why we chose to try and join it. So none of that was in the evidence at the time. We did some serious consideration of the location and, sought all sorts of different inputs around the location, not from this area. So we did a lot of due diligence on the location, and there was no indication anywhere that this was in the wind.
Right.
Even though the neighbours and the council were fully aware that this was happening.
Right. I've got no further questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next witness is Mr. Heath.
Morning, Mr. Heath.
Morning,
I'll
sir.
get your brief.
So Mr. Heath has a brief summary statement that he's going to read
Very
through,
good.
and these hard copies, so he's just
Thank
going to
you.
hand those around.
It's just a couple of pages, so to highlight some of the key points. Excuse me, I'm not intending to dwell on matters too much, with economics not appearing to be too much in dispute. But just to point out that, my analysis shows that the industrial growth in Cambridge market has significantly exceeded projections after Area 7, or the deferred industrial zone, was put in place. And specifically, the employment growth rate in Cambridge has increased by more than double since that time. In terms of industrial GDP in the local market's risen by 15% over the past 3 years, contributing roughly half the district's total industrial growth. So this area is growing at a faster rate than other areas in the district, becoming more of an economic contributor. In my view, advancing the live zoning would generate economic benefits to the market and community without incurring any material economic costs. The live zoning would improve market efficiency, support competition, and provide greater certainty in industrial land supply. Given the limited availability of service industrial land in the short term, enabling earlier development of Area 7 would help mitigate price escalation, support business clustering, and accelerate local employment growth, all benefits without any identified economic costs. From an economic perspective, retaining the 2030 activation trigger would make Area 7 live is inappropriate. While the 2030 trigger may have been appropriate under previous slower growth assumptions, current market conditions indicate stronger demand. Basically, things have moved on since the original deferred industrial zoning was put in place. Purposefully delaying development would restrict land choice, constrain supply, and risk local price inflation, resulting in economic inefficiency. Area 7 is live zoned at the 2030 date as a backup trigger, would effectively changes the activity status for subdivision and development of Area 7 from non-compliant to restricted. This would interfere with the market certainty, and that's a pretty important point I'll elaborate on in a minute. Importantly, from a practical perspective, even if Area 7 were rezoned now, this would not translate to immediate development. In practice, land is unlikely to be development ready till around 2027, due to timing required for the subdivision design, consenting and infrastructure servicing, and securing developments and tenant commitments. It also needs Road 4 to be vested in council. However, live zoning provides the opportunity, a better opportunity for integrated development of Area 6 and Area 7, and within Area 7 itself. Overall, based on my economic analysis, PC33 represents an appropriate and economically efficient response to an accelerating industrial market demand in the Cambridge area. Would align industrial supply with practical demand, promote flexibility, and reduce economic inefficiencies caused by the delayed development. Just sort of taking a step back from it all a little bit. I mean, we're talking about pretty small areas in the context of industrial development. Area 6 and Area 7 combined is roughly about just over 36 hectares. And that's small in terms of industrial scale, and that's across both areas. Area 7 itself is only 4.5% of Cambridge's total industrial land supply. So we're not talking about large areas. So the integration of both these areas is actually really important, and providing the ability or greater ability to integrate that development would get a more efficient outcome, I think, is just a sensible and pragmatic approach. And the other thing in terms of on the market certainty angle, sort of large institutional and private sector investors prefer to have a zone in place before they pull the trigger on purchasing, getting subdivision underway. And I think live zoning now would provide that certainty. It doesn't mean the hammer's going to be swinging tomorrow. The hammer still won't be swinging till about 27-ish plus.
But to have the zone in place now is an important trigger, I think, for those larger private sector investments and institutional investments who may want to invest in the land. So, and the early integration of an investor like that would allow greater integration with Area 6 as that's developed as well. So I think, despite all the parties and what they're saying and what they're doing, I'm just thinking from a market perspective, an efficient 36 hectares of industrial land is important. We don't want to develop, if we got, it's identified to be rezoned, we don't want to use this land resource inefficiently and chew up more highly productive land because it's all highly productive around Cambridge. So let's use this opportunity to actually give it the best chance of integration and efficient development as a whole, rather than doing it piecemeal individualistically. So, yeah, from that perspective, I don't think there are any concerns or identified economic costs that would sort of prevent what's being proposed here.
Just on your comments at the end there, just so I've got my numbers right, you said Area 7, which is about 16 hectares.
16.3 roughly,
Right,
yeah.
is 4.5%. And if I make that 5%, then 10% is 32 hectares. So it's the total area you're talking about is 320 hectares in Cambridge.
349.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, and that represents what? All industrial land or undeveloped industrial land?
No, that's the total industrial land
Total
provision.
industrial
Yeah.
land, okay.
And it includes PC 14, the Fonterra land, which is still undeveloped.
I mean, I did note the point you made in your evidence about the fact that this is a small piece.
Yeah.
And so even of undeveloped land, which is in the sort of mid 100 to 200 range,
Yep.
it's still a relatively small addition.
Yes.
To what's sitting there vacant.
Correct. Yep.
And that land is a provision for the next 27 years, odd.
Mm-hmm.
Out to 2052.
Yep.
So what we've got here is 16 hectares of land gross, sitting in a context of 100 to 200 hectares of land over that very large time frame. So is that the sort of context that you're really saying that this doesn't really have any economic sort of importance, not at a personal level, obviously,
Yeah.
but in the whole context, doesn't really have a great economic importance in terms of costs or benefits?
Well, I wouldn't say it wouldn't have economic importance. I'd certainly say in terms of just the quantity of land, it's not a big hitting piece of land.
No.
But it could be more impactful because it does provide the opportunity for a single site, for a large
Like another
distribution
APL
logistics.
comes along,
Correct, yeah.
couldn't develop unless you use bits of both Area 6 and 7.
That's
You
right.
can do it on one or the other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it provides, it is strategically important in that regard because there's, I think, limited opportunity at the moment for some large site development to occur. And this seems to be a pretty growing part of the market, particularly along the expressway. So yeah, I think it's important to provide that opportunity for the market, which I don't think is really there now. And the Fonterra land obviously is not really going to get underway till post 2028 from memory with the wastewater system. So again, that's looking likely about 2030 before it's on the market anyway. So again, it's providing certainty for the market for these investors to go, okay, we've got the zone now, let's start spinning our wheels and getting something happen.
Right. I'll just check whether there's, I mean, most of my questions to you have become redundant.
Yes.
In the context of the fact that the parties around the table agree on the 2030 date now, and what's at issue is the additional trigger about Road 4, but I'll just check. No, I haven't got any other questions, but Mr. Akehurst is on the line. Morning, Mr. Akehurst.
Good morning.
So you've been hearing what's been going on?
Yes, I've been listening this morning. Yep.
Right. So So would you agree that you and Mr. Heath are pretty well aligned? I mean, you did have some differences on the date. In fact, that was essentially the difference between you in terms of the provisions anyway. Obviously, you had some minor differences on what this meant for adding capacity and the significance or otherwise of that.
Yeah. No, I think we're broadly aligned. I struggle a little bit with the additional benefits argument that Mr. Heath is raising, given that I think those benefits would occur regardless of the 2030 date existing or not. But given that he has, or the consensus is that the 2030 date can stay, I think that the triggers are important, that there is certainty, I think, established by saying that this piece of land develops once Area 6 is at 80%, and the road is established and vested. That seems to me to be a logical kind of sequencing and an efficient sequencing. But other than that, I'm pretty much in alignment with Mr. Heath's thinking.
Right. And the presence, the inclusion or otherwise of the Mr. Crisp's Road 4 trigger, does that have any economic consequence?
Well, I think it's important. My understanding, it's an or trigger, not an and trigger. So either, I think one of the things to bear in mind is that my understanding is that Area 6 is liable to be at 80% in a relatively short space of time. So given that they are saying that this won't be available till 2027, I'm not sure whether that 80% constraint is actually material. So then the vesting of Road 4 seems to me to be the relevant trigger, and I think it's an important trigger.
All right. Likewise with Mr. Heath, I had some other questions for you on details of development locally and what have you, but I don't really think that's going to add to decision-making criteria anymore that I've got.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is an issue of capacity. I think we've both got to the position where there is, with the inclusion of the Plan Change 14 land, there is ample capacity. So it does come down to, I think, as Mr. Heath has pointed out, a sort of a logical and market acceptable and market certain kind of development process, and I think that is done through the triggers that are being proposed.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for listening in. If there are anything that comes up in your area that I need to put a question to you after the hearing's finished, then I'll do that.
Okay, brilliant.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next witness is Mr. Inder.
Morning, Cinda.
Good morning. If I may, can I take my evidences read up to chapter 3, section 3? And I'll just start with a couple of points I've just highlighted through there rather than read the whole thing.
Yes, I mean, obviously you've been here listening in, so I mean,
Yes.
the focus is on sort of points of difference and just move quickly through the sort of the general context.
So in short, my evidence to the PC 17 hearing was that the Road 4 should extend to the boundary to future-proof the ability for Area 7 to be developed and not create effects on Peak Road, and that has been taken through now to the subdivision consent for Area 6. So that's good. It confirms that the connection of Area 7 to Hautapu Road on the basis, it confirms the connection of Area 7 to Hautapu Road on the basis that the approved subdivision is implemented in accordance with the conditions of that consent. So at the present time, the consent is the whole lot 101, the road is vested, the whole thing right through to the boundary. I support this outcome, and I note Mr. Hudson on behalf of Waipa District Council also supports it. And I agree with Mr. Hudson's conclusion there is no significant transport effects arising from the vesting of Road 4 and the use of it by Area 7 as a live industrial zone. Paragraph 35, I note Mr. Hudson now confirms the roundabout design has been revised to provide a dual lane roundabout. This is at the Hautapu Road Victoria Road intersection. And I expect this change will adequately accommodate the anticipated traffic for Area 6 and 7. And this will avoid the predicted congestion issues identified in my HLG evidence to Plan Change 17. So I'm going to cross to section 4. I do not anticipate there to be any adverse transport effects generated by advancing the timing of the live zoning for Area 7 and subsequent development, provided that the following has occurred. Road 4 is vested to council from Area 6 through to Area 7 boundary. Road 4 is formed and completed to the required industrial road standard up to the boundary of Area 7. The required transport infrastructure upgrades on Hautapu Road are completed before Area 6 receives 224C certificate for subdivision in accordance with the Hautapu Industrial Structure Plan area requirements. Therefore, there's no transport planning and traffic effects-based reason to delay industrial development in Area 7 until 80% of Area 6 receives Section 224C certificate, or 31st of March 2030, whichever is earlier. 5.1, I agree with Mr. McLeay's conclusions and recommendations concerning transport matters. And 5.2, I also agree with Mr. Hudson that removal of reference to Area 6 in the HISPA key could result in potentially significant transport effects on Hautapu Road. So this reference should not be removed. Equally, I consider that the developers of Area 7 should contribute a fair share toward the identified infrastructure upgrades needed to support Area 6 and 7 developments. However, I appreciate this is a matter for council and the respective developers. 6.2, my conclusion, from a transport planning and effects perspective, I agree with Mr. Crisp that there is no reason why the live zoning of Area 7 cannot occur now to enable its development for industrial purposes when Road 4 has been vested through the Area 6, Area 7 boundary.
Thank you for confirming that. I mean, essentially from your point of view, there's no transport planning or traffic effects reason that make any of the dates critical. I mean, if it was to happen tomorrow, there's a process for addressing
That's right. The dates,
transport matters.
the dates and the 80% were a catch-all or a worst case scenario. But the key point is that development in Area 7 can occur when the road is vested. There's no transport reason why, or traffic effects reason why that couldn't occur.
No. And it's important that the development of Area 7 off Peak Road never happens.
That's correct.
Right. That's a key matter.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and equally, council doesn't want to be in a position where development has occurred in Area 7 but cannot get access to Hautapu Road. So it's critical that that lot 101 is vested entirely through to the boundary and not divided up into segments, if you like, invested in segments.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. Chris. Morning. So you haven't got another summary statement, so you're just going to update what you've.
Yes, so I
written
won't read you anything. I will just respond to a few things and then focus on sort of where things are at that pointy end of the equation. So if I could just start out, I just need to respond to three things briefly in Mr. Moran's evidence. On page 9 of his evidence, on the previous page, he's made some statements that there's a whole lot of incorrect things in my evidence, so I just need to briefly address those. One was that some assertion that I apparently made that plan change 17 was a private plan change. I didn't say that at all. It's the rezoning of Area 6 started out in life as being prepared as a private plan change, but then was adopted by the council, and the documentation that was being prepared for that private plan change became part of Plan Change 17, which was promulgated by the council.
Right.
The second point was the issue of whether or not there was a confidentiality agreement. Mr. Tony Quickfall was the planning manager at the time. He advised me that the reason why there was no consultation with the HLG was because there was a confidentiality agreement in place with Karma Trust. Now, that might not have been in writing or anything like that, but the end result was that confidentiality certainly was maintained, and the HLG knew nothing about the plan change or the rezoning of Area 6 until they got a letter a month or so before its notification, as I've set out in my evidence. So
So that process, as I understand what I've read, is it started off as Futureproof had an opportunity to make submissions, and so there was a submission made to Futureproof, and they said, well, yes, that's a good idea. And then from then it came back to council for activation.
Yeah, so my understanding was that Karma Trust wanted to rezone its land. The council advised them to go through the Futureproof process, which was exactly the right sort of thing to do. The problem for the HLG was that Futureproof process was not, it was behind closed doors insofar as no one had any ability to know what was happening if you were just a private landowner. The people who lodged submissions, that was not published on the Futureproof's website. There was, unless you were proactively involved in that process, you wouldn't even know it was happening. So the HLG knew nothing about it. And then the first they heard about it was when they got a letter from the council saying the council was promulgating Plan Change 17. And would you like to make any comments on it? And when we suggested that we would like to make some changes to it, there was no, sorry, can't do that because that'll upset our timeframes. So hence we then had to engage in the submission process and go from there. So, So anyway, the third issue raised that I've been told I'm incorrect about was about the little or zero mitigation of effects. And what my evidence is talking about there was the effects that we talked about in evidence about the effects on, for example, Mr. Hawthorne's business and the effect on Mr. Gunderson in terms of his lifestyle, and the effects on Mr. Hawthorne as well in terms of his house. And all those effects have come to pass. So that was what that reference was to.
Right.
Okay, so moving on to more positive things. Basically, the whole philosophy of what's been happening around Hautapu is that, because I've been involved in Plan Change 17, this Plan Change 33, I was the principal author of Plan Change 14, which was again prepared as a private plan change and then adopted by council. So that was the Fonterra land. So, and I also was the I also did Plan Change 13, which was the rezoned the BIL land. So that's the APL land. So that's that C10 10 blocks. So I've been intimately involved in all of the industrial development around Hautapu over a long time. And there's been a consistent position and sort of approach taken throughout plan change 17, 14 and 33, which is the batting order is area 6 goes first, area 7 goes next, and area plan change 14, Fonterra's land, goes third in terms of a logical rollout of supply to the market. And that is because obviously, area 6 is being developed at the moment. The fact that the road will be vested at some point, that enables the next stage to occur in terms of area 7. And Fonterra has a constraint, and I'm working for Fonterra at the moment in terms of it cannot get out of the Bardoe farm until it's got its wastewater treatment plant up and running, and it's got alternative land to spray irrigate its wastewater. So it's purchased the Fencourt farm further north for the latter. We are in the process of consenting that at the moment. So if you think about their wastewater treatment plant coming on stream basically next year, 26, you would want to have a year or so to let that bed in and make sure it's working properly, getting the consents and setting up the irrigation for the alternative property. So you're looking about 27. So therefore 28 is about the earliest that they could realistically get out of there. So that's sort of been the constraint. And basically that then also, means things happen sort of click, 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 which they don't often do. But anyway, that's been the consistent sort of story, if you like, and what the planning has reflected in the district plan.
So you'd be ready to go 2028 with that, but obviously from what you said just before that, they would then wait for 6 and 7 to be developed first.
Well, not what Fonterra does is they could develop from 28 onwards, irrespective of what's happening in terms of area 7. But that's been the sort of, in terms of the planning, I mean, best laid plans of mice and men and all that. Basically, that's the intention. So there's no attempt by anyone to upset the integrity of that, where particularly Karma Trust get the first crack at it, if you like, and exposure to the market. So, yeah. So, so that's where that was sort of in part sort of Sue responding to your comment about sort of historical expectation. It's a little bit more than historical expectation. That's been consciously planned for, if you like, and it's been in the evidence for all of these three plan changes, that there is that logical rollout of supply, and yeah, so that's essentially that point. So just sort of turning to the actual sort of pointy end of all this. What I propose in my evidence is, and the reality of it is that area 7 to be developed needs road 4, and that is in reality the critical trigger. And my understanding is that will occur coincident with 80% of the area being developed at a minimum, and in actual fact it'll probably be 100%, because when you look at the subdivision that Karma Trust has been granted, covers the entirety of their property. And then given that the other end of it, which is to the east, has already been subdivided and developed, that's 100% is achieved. So what that tells you then, the dates are just academic. I mean, my client wants a date to try and help with some market certainty, and I understand that. But from a planning point of view, they're just illusionary, because let's say, whether it's 27, 28 or 30, let's say you get to that point and the road's not there, what do? You can't do anything, because you have to have access via road 4. Everyone agrees with that. Even HLG's own transportation witness says you've got to have road 4 in place, because no one agrees with the alternative hypothesis, which is that you could have access out onto Peak Road. No one supports that at all. So the reality of it is that's why I've proposed in the amended rule that the vesting of Road 4 is essentially the critical trigger. And my understanding is that will occur at the same time as the completion of Karma Trust's current subdivision, which means that you hit the 80% in any event. And one of the things that we, in sort of hindsight, would have been quite keen to do is make sure that that vesting of that road must occur as part of the next tranche of any 224 certificates being released. I've been involved in lots of subdivisions where you change your staging on a regular basis. I've been involved in St Kilda and Bridleways around Cambridge, where we're constantly making changes in terms of things like that, where things don't happen as originally anticipated. So it's really important that that road, and that's why that rule WW needs to be there, that the first subdivision needs to vest the entire length of that road right up to the boundary. And that's just to prevent a lockout type situation. Not suggesting that will occur, but that's a theoretical possibility. And we need to enable that to occur, the access to be put in place.
Right.
Ms. McIntosh mentioned a consequential change. If you look at the Appendix 2 of the 42A report, on page 4, there's the section there that deals with S1, Appendix S1, which is the titled Future-Proof Growth Cells. It needs to have the same in the red text that's there. It's the bottom of page 4.
Yeah.
That would need to be updated as well to have the same wording as what I proposed in the rule, which is to insert the road being a trigger, road 4 being a trigger as well. At the moment, it doesn't include that.
Just on your wording 4XX, I mean, given your focus on Road 4,
Yeah.
do you need the 80% trigger?
I think, sir, you'd be opening a world of pain.
Right. Okay. Right.
If we tried to upset that. I mean, the reality of it is part of that 80% is to reflect what I was talking about before, which is that logical rollout. You move all your services and your development from the point of connectivity, which in this case is Hautapu Road. So you're starting with your road being built there. It's not sort of clear on the subdivision plan, but the reality is I would expect that Karma Trust would physically build the road halfway up that corridor, because that's all it's needed for their subdivision. And then, but the road being vested in council means that council would then can say to whoever develops Area 7, right, fill your boots, you can then build the rest of the road, which is exactly how it should be. I mean, that should be a cost-sharing arrangement between the two landowner groups. And there's no way that Karma Trust should be forced to pay for the whole road. That's just not fair. So, and then the same with your services as well, as the services are located to the south and you logically roll them out to the north. So that's just preserving that,
right,
that sort of development, if you like.
So given that those things happen together anyway,
yeah, it becomes a little academic.
Your advice to me is leave it alone. Don't go change anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've got the word "or" there between the clauses.
Yes.
And that's fine. It's just, but as I say, the reality of it is that you can't, because I mean, you think about this land is subject to a subdivision consent. You can't effectively create some lots and not others, because otherwise they won't have a legal description or a land parcel, if you like. And even if you said, well, I'm creating all these lots and then I'm just going to have this balanced lot. The reality is that balanced lot is still a lot. It's live zoned now and it could be developed. So that meets the, and it will have a 224 certificate for it as well. So it'll be, yeah, this is a contingency just in case something goes differently. There's no reason why, even then you couldn't probably, you would have to go through a two-stage process if you wanted to vest the road first. There's no reason why Karma Trust would do that. That would just cost you extra money. So you could do it and then have two lots side by side and there's further subdivide, but that's just pointless. The whole idea is the whole thing should happen in one hit.
I mean, these sorts of rules are always written sort of with the potential worst case scenario in mind.
Yeah.
Hence the date.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I mean, if a worst case scenario happened and you had to rely on the date, what's the configuration of land development in Area 7?
Well, that's why I say that the whole thing becomes a little academic because let's say you get to 2030 and road 4's not there. So you say, well, what do you do? I mean, the only thing you can really do is do a subdivision with a condition precedent, which says that basically I'll do my subdivision and but I can't have any industrial activities until I've got access via road 4. Yeah, or you might have to look at whatever alternatives there might be out there. You could go east and come out through, either Hautapu Welders or through Pontera's land or something like that. There's Hautapu Welders owns, but that's just, that's all a bit speculative. The expectation is that this road will be in place, and and we just need to make sure that that's locked in via the rules, and not reliant on a subdivision consent that could be changed.
Okay. I had a couple of other questions. Just in terms of Area 7, the property, are all the owners in there part of the HLG?
In Area 7? Yes, they are.
Right.
So there's basically, so it's the Hawthorns, Camerons, Gunderson, Hoyle, and it says on my plan in figure 2, Hawks, but I think that's because it must be owned by a trust, but it's Nick Osmet, who's the owner of that property there.
Okay.
So all that land, that's shown on that figure are part of the HLG.
Yeah, so I mean, the other owners have just chosen not to be involved with the process necessarily.
They are involved. They're just not here, and but obviously, as you can tell from looking at that plan there, Mr. Cameron is here. So in the blue jersey, he's just not presenting here. But so basically, you've got the vast majority. You've got about 80% of the land holding represented here in terms of people that are here. But obviously, Mr. Gunderson and Mr. Hawthorne are the two that are being most affected and most concerned.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, given your long involvement in the area, which you went through just before, I mean, this is the last piece of the puzzle of the industrial land, C8, C9, C10.
Yes, it is in this corner. So what it is that if you go back in time, originally the Hautapu industrial area was essentially the block to the south, which was Hautapu Road was the northern boundary, Peak Road the eastern, Victoria Road, was even Hannon Road actually, was the eastern boundary, and the expressway was the southern boundary. So it's a big square. That is the original Hautapu structure plan area that was zoned industrial. And then since then, you've had what's called the C10 growth cell, which is the one to the east of the dairy factory, which is the BIL/APL land plus the Fonterra land and Henmar Trust. And all apart from the Henmar Trust, that's all in the process. It's either rezoned or being zoned subject to an appeal, subject to a couple of appeals, 3 appeals at the moment for Plan Change 14. And then you've had the Hautapu Dairy Factory has been there since about 1884. And it's been live zoned as industrial for decades. And then what's happened is that industrial zone has progressively crept to the west, with the Mango only stream being the northern boundary. And so I see this as filling in the last pieces of the jigsaw puzzle in terms of that northwestern corner of being industrial.
I'll just put anything you said about Henmar Trust out of my head at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's nothing to do with this.
No, we don't want to talk about it.
No, that's the only missing piece of that jigsaw puzzle in terms of the future that is identified in the district plan, because it's part of the C10 industrial growth cell, and it's the only remaining piece of land that has not been the subject of a plan change to rezone it to either deferred or live zone. It remains as a piece of rural zone, but it's within that industrial growth cell.
I haven't got any other questions. I think given what's gone on this morning, I think that's there's nothing more that I need to dig into.
Okay. Thanks, Zip.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes the presentation for the applicant. If I could, there's one point I think is worth making, and either Mr. Hawthorne or Mr. Gunderson can address you on it. And that is, my understanding is the intention from the landowner group is that it is the full block that is sold, so that there will be less likelihood of some sort of incremental or ad hoc development within Area 7. So the intention is that it's the whole thing goes at once. But with that, if you need that confirmed by one of the members of the group, I can ask them to do that.
Right, thank you for that. That makes sense. We're well ahead of schedule, and I think we'll obviously just continue. But maybe we just have a short break for 10 minutes, and then we can have a changing of the guard. Or are you happy to sit at the end of the table there, Mr. Muldowney?
That's perfectly fine.
You'll shuffle down. Okay, so you can occupy the similar position.
Could we just perhaps have 15 minutes?
Yes.
There's a couple of matters that have come out of the evidence and presentation this morning that I'd like to discuss with my clients. So
Yes,
just have
absolutely.
15 minutes and then we can-
Yeah, so what, 11:30?
Yes, perfect, sir. And also I have provided legal submissions through to
Right, Mr. Muldowney, floor is yours.
thank you, sir. Assuming that's right, go on.
Wouldn't just in relation to rules 69, which you've got in your brief, irrespective of the absence of lot 4, they would still have a higher activity status than RDA, wouldn't they? Because they wouldn't comply with the in a general accordance with the structure plan. It's either, I'm not sure whether it's DA or non-compliance.
I'm not sure what it might, whether it goes back to non-complying, it might be full discretionary at that point, you might be assessing the elements.
Hmm.
of non-compliance.
Rule 69 and section 15 of the plan.
There you go.
All right. Okay.
So you're still going to be assessing the same things.
Hmm.
But I think the most important point is the sequencing of how 224C works with the vesting. I cannot conceive of a situation where you rely on the vesting of the road when the first trigger hasn't already been met.
I'm not asking this question. I'm not suggesting anybody's not playing with a straight bat or anything, but just exploring the sort of possibilities. Is it possible that you could avoid, if you didn't title all the lots at once, therefore not 80%, that the road then becomes, the vesting of the road then on its own becomes important? But you've still got to vest the road even on one title, don't you? That's right.
You can't get the rest of the subdivision without completing the stage.
No,
I mean, I suppose the other option is that someone comes back in and changes the staging as Mr. Chris has suggested. But again, I come back to the fact that this subdivision is well advanced. The first stage has been completed. I mean, I'm not sure if Sergeant, you've done a site visit.
Oh, I've definitely. Yeah. I viewed the land from the boundary of lot 6 and 7 from Peak Road. So I looked across where the earthworks come right up to the boundary and the various stormwater ponds, etc. Yeah.
I mean, so if that's an issue, I mean, the other way to deal with it is I think the way that you suggested this morning, drop the first trigger, just have a road vesting rule.
But then that takes me to another question. And this is the relative importance of different parts of the structure plan provisions. Mr. Chris this morning said, well, we're going to be changing the rule for the structure plan area. Then you've also got to do something to make sure it's consistent back in the appendix. And that's a subsequent change. The way that you pitched it up was more like the appendix was a sort of had sort of a higher level of power, if you like, and that needed to be kept consistent, and therefore that was directed back into the structure plan rules. I mean, or do they just have to run in tandem? And this is a plan change. We can change what we like.
Well, consistency.
Yes.
Is probably the goal here.
Yeah.
Than anything else. So, I mean, I think the structure plan in terms of, how you might consider the higher order or the sequencing here or a hierarchy, dealing with the objectives and policies of the plan obviously starts first. Those broad objectives and policies and rules that are requiring consistency with the structure plan and then the rules themselves. It should all integrate.
Okay, well, I'll certainly go back through that to see whether there's any sort of signals in the plan to indicate what the way, which way it should flow. Because I mean, usually an appendix is something that has, it's a store of sort of detail that you refer to when you want explanation. It doesn't sort of drive back up the other way, does it?
Yeah, well, that's where PC 17 put it.
Yeah.
Maybe it was put in the wrong place.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
Yeah, so I come back to that point is that if there is to be a roading trigger in terms of the sequencing that I've just described, I think it calls into question whether you need the first trigger at all. And then probably the other point I just want to make is in terms, and we sort of explored this morning, was if you are favouring the roading trigger, then obviously there is something that needs to be done about Rule 15.4 WBW. Because at the moment, I think the concern that the Karma Trust has is that it finds itself sort of inadvertently in a position where it's somehow inconsistent with this new rule. Now, as I've explained to them, and I'm sure you're aware of, there's law around whether or not it have a retrospective effect on them. They've got their consent after all, and they're entitled to rely on it and undertake their supervision and reliance on it. But I think outside of that, the preference would be here, if you are to introduce some kind of trigger which is related to the road vesting, I think there does need to be an ironing out of the drafting of Rule WW to deal with that. I think you had asked the applicant to perhaps come up with some drafting edits, and I haven't seen any yet. It struck me that, and I'm happy to circulate this, that you could say that's a bit of surgery to the rule in its current form. You could say the first subdivision consent enabling subdivision of Area 6, whether staged or not, must require that on completion, the entire length of the proposed road between Hautapu Road and Area 7 shown on the Hautapu structure plan as Road 4 must vest in council. That would seem to sort of take care of the issue.
What's happening at the moment?
What's happening at the moment. And I think still achieves the objective that it's intended to. So I haven't circulated that to my own friend, but I can do that, and to Council's 42A officer and see if that wording would work. But as I say, that's a backstop in the sense that our starting point is that we say that the 80% 224C trigger rule works. The reversion that we heard this morning to the 2030 backstop date is obviously welcome news, and we welcome that change. But the position is that we think that the reasons that I've explained in terms of that sequencing, we just see the road vesting rule as being redundant because it inevitably comes after the first trigger that's currently being promoted has been met. And I know that there's all this sort of suspicion floating around. Yeah, lots of what ifs. What if it gets manipulated? What if something, the black swan event comes along? I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know what I'm answering here, other than this sort of general air of suspicion that these guys are going to somehow try and, queer the pitch, and they're not. So we see the rule as being straightforward in the way that it's been promoted in the 42A report. It's consistent with the original ODP provisions, which was what was agreed between the parties. We simply don't see anything to change. I've really dealt with, I think, the WW rule issue in 23 and 24 of the submissions, and I think ultimately the conclusions, I think I've really gone there, but I'll just read the submissions to complete the picture. The Karma Trust has never opposed Area 7 becoming a live industrial zone. It simply seeks that it occur in accordance with Council's settled land use release strategy and supported by the necessary technical and planning inputs. Karma Trust's development of Area 6 is advancing well and will be completed in the next few years. On completion, once Section 224C certification is completed and the titles issued, Road 4 vests in council, and developers within Area 7 will take the benefit of the new road connecting Area 7 to the wider transport network. The 2030 backstop date is conservative, leaves plenty of runway for this to occur. The rule works, don't fix what isn't broken.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Muldowney. We've had, I think we've had a discussion about your submissions, and I've got something might come up in the course of Mr. Boyd and Mr. Moran presentation, but otherwise that's it for the moment.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate that. So I'll hand over to Malcolm Boyd to make his presentation. He has produced a written statement which was pre-circulated according to the corrections yesterday. And I don't think he intends to read all of it. I think just has a few comments that he wants to make and take it as read.
Yeah, don't intend to read.
So just a moment, just so we're clear, I mean, I mucked around with the timetable a bit because I went fast and then we've brought you on. So, I mean, what we'll do is we'll finish the Karma Trust case and then we'll have a break, which would bring Mr. McClay on after lunch. And then any comments you might make at that point. I mean, I'd imagine you want to give me something in writing a bit later than that. I mean, there may not be that many things, but at least there'll be your suggestion of the WW rule, if that's the case as well.
Yes, I think I'll make some brief verbal comments
Yes.
today, followed by some questions.
Right, thank you. Yeah, so that's what we'll do. So over back to you, Mr. Boyd. I'll just get your statement up if I may. Over to you. Thank you.
Look, obviously, taking as read, I don't intend to regurgitate it at all. Just that, you know, we continually support the private plan change. We think the section 42A report is appropriate. And obviously there's a lot of talk around this road vesting rule, and we felt that as part of our subdivision consent it was dealt with because it gets vested. So I'll leave it at that. The only other little bits that I'd like to mention is we're a little bit surprised at some of the matters that were raised in the evidence, which we litigated a lot of matters that were addressed, and regarding our conduct, which we reject, and we've done nothing but run a straight up and down process on this whole thing. We've never done anything outside of the process. We've stuck to the rules all the way through, and we've done everything that has been asked of us by the appropriate bodies, and done that to our best ability. We've tried to move as expediently as we can on our whole development, and as you have seen, we're currently doing earthworks. Some of our planning got a little bit delayed because stormwater needed redesigning, which can take a little bit of time in this day and age. A lot of remodeling and stuff happened during our detailed engineering, which we've done a significant amount of. We've made sure that our subdivision consent caters for future connectivity to Area 7, and we're moving as quickly as we can, and we're stepping into the process. So if there's any questions you have, I'm more than happy to answer those.
Right. Given that you are underway, have you what does the market look like at the moment?
We're starting to get a lot of requests from people, but it's very hard to nail down anything or necessarily commit when you probably don't have a firm line of sight of title. But we're certainly starting to make. We're starting to talk to people, and I would imagine there'll be agreements in place very shortly for land purchases, subject to time. That's another encouragement for us to get title as quickly as we can. Because, you can't get a deposit until.
I mean, you've got pretty good sized block of land, but have you had any inquiries from people that really need a lot of land, like an APL size?
Not
Block?
at that level. We have had inquiry around sort of 2 hectare lots.
Right.
A couple of people interested in 4 and 5 hectare lots.
Hmm.
So, and as you can see on our subdivision plan, that's one of the main reasons we left a large lot to one side, because we have had inquiry from people for lots
Right.
of that size.
Yes.
You know, there was no point in chopping it all up into pieces when we've had people
No.
who were asking for large lots. Yeah.
Hmm. All right. Yeah, there's no other relevant questions. I think I've got for you at this point in time.
All right.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes, not quite.
Is it?
No, we've just not
afternoon.
anymore, sorry. Yes,
First-
anyway, welcome, Mr. Moran.
First mistake, hopefully there's not too many more. Generally, I find, like, I think that we've advanced a long way from this morning to where I am now. And in terms of my statement of evidence, I think, you know, the 2030 rule has been, there's agreement between parties now. And in my view, the only point of contention, if you want to, and I wouldn't call it a serious point of contention either, is the road to vest, which you've heard from everyone today, and you're well aware of the issue there. So look, in my view, and I'm just echoing Mr. Maldoni here, is that for essentially the road to be vested, 2 to 4 has to be obtained. So it's going to happen as part of the subdivision. And I know firsthand, because I was involved with the subdivision resource consent, how much work has gone into the subdivision. So the chances of that getting changed or varied, very, very unlikely. In fact, yeah, virtually it won't happen. So if, of course, that vesting rule was to remain in there, then okay, that's fine from my perspective. But I think just that corresponding rule in the district plan, the proposed 15.4.2.WW needs to be slightly amended, just to give clarity in terms of what it means by the first subdivision and the staged approach of that subdivision. So that's essentially all I really have to say, but really happy to answer questions.
So you think that, like, the status, the addition of the extra trigger in relation to Road 4,
yeah,
it doesn't add anything?
Well, I don't think so, no. Because this is so advanced now to get to this point. We've got a condition 29 there requiring the road to be vested. It has to happen. And yeah, the 80% happens first before the obviously the road to vest as well, or the 2 to 4. So look, I just don't think it adds any material benefit in my view, but if it is there, then yeah, just perhaps some only minor amendments to that rule referenced before.
And I mean, just drilling down a bit more on that. So in your experience, that extra rule doesn't account for or provide for any other eventuality that could arise that is not dealt with by the 80% rule?
Yeah, so look, it doesn't, we're talking very minor likelihood of something happening. And that could be potentially, yeah, as I said before, the subdivision being surrendered and a new one applied for. So it doesn't account for that, but the chances of that happening are very, very rare, or very virtually unlikely or impossible. So.
Okay. I had a question for you on the sort of the current state of development, but we've talked about that. That's fine. No, I don't think there's anything further. Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
Just on that last point, so I mean, it comes back to this, I guess, question of what is it that we're actually what's the problem we're trying to solve here? I mean, even with the scenario that Mr. Moran has identified where subdivision consent gets surrendered or there's some sort of change, it's hard to see how the road vesting rule does anything to address or solve that if you've got the 224C rule still there. So again, we can talk about these ideas of something going wrong or awry here, but I cannot anchor that with the rule and how the rule solves the problem. It's a mystery to me. So I feel like we're solving a problem that doesn't exist.
So the vesting of the road and the titling of the titles are fellow travellers in terms of the process that you understand happens. All right.
That is the presentation for the Karma Trust. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. So we will take a lunch break and we should resume at 1 o'clock. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Mr. McKay,
Thank you, sir.
over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report. It's very good. And I think probably it's obvious we've moved on quite a bit from various issues that you addressed in the first time up. But I mean, without dwelling on things that are clearly not at issue, over to you in terms of presenting your summary as you wish.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yep, I'll begin by taking the 42A report as read. Nothing that's been presented this morning has given me cause to think that I need to change my recommendations. The main areas subject to discussion now are whether Rule 15.4.2 WW is redundant, as noted by Mr. Moran, and whether Rule 15.4.2 XX needs to be amended to add a new road vesting trigger as proposed by Mr. Crisp. So we'll talk to Rule 15.4.2 WW first. I don't think that this rule is redundant, and this is because stage 2 of the subdivision has not yet been completed, and there is potential, however remote, that it may not be completed for whatever reason. The rule makes it clear that if this happens, any subsequent subdivision consent will still need to provide the road. And I'd be open to amendment of this rule to make it clearer if deemed necessary, and would be happy to sit down with other parties and work out an alternative wording. So moving now to Rule 15.4.2 XX. The only situation where the new road trigger would apply is if the current subdivision is not completed. And this would mean that alternative subdivision would not have to achieve the 80% trigger. Subdivision consent would still be required in this scenario, and the existing plan rules in combination with Rule 15.4.2 WW would be used by consenting staff to ensure that the road is provided. Note that the existing subdivision consent ensured the creation of a road without any specific rules being in place. And I've got confidence in the consenting staff to ensure that a road is provided as part of any alternative subdivision process. So on that basis, I think that the new trigger is unnecessary. Yeah, happy to take questions.
So just in your dealing with XX there, so you're saying that there is a possible scenario that you know, the world changed and things just fell into abeyance and didn't get completed, and therefore sort of, I don't know, time ran out and then things were picked up again. So effectively you're saying that the process would just start again and would need to be in compliance with you know, the rules of the plan and would be processed in the usual way. So okay, so so where did you get to on the inclusion of the Road 4 rule? Not.
That's Rule WW. XX, the new trigger B. Yes. That's, I don't think it's necessary. Yeah, retain as recommended in the 42.
Well, I appreciate your comments there have come off the back, listening to what's going on in the trading, so that's fine. Don't need to interrogate that anymore. Just in terms of, we've had some discussion on that rule 15.4.269, what generally in accordance with the structure plan, etc. What actually happens when it doesn't comply? Is it DA or is it non-compliant?
It's non-compliant.
Non-compliant.
Clarify that. It is discretionary unless there is another rule that identifies that it becomes non-compliant. So, yes, so in this instance, say, for example, WW was in play. The default text under that rule has been is for it to go to non-compliant. So the non-conformity in that instance would make it non-compliant. Without the rule, the status for not being in general accordance with the structure plan would be discretionary.
There's one unrelated matter to this discussion we had today, just in terms of the riparian management plan. The formation of that would need to include public access, or you need to consider public access as part of that. So just wondering where that consideration might come up.
Yeah, that would be considered as part of the preparation of the riparian management plan. Yeah.
Certainly, the rule as it's written doesn't consider that riparian management area would be taken over as public reserve. It also wouldn't necessarily trigger our requirements for the taking of an esplanade strip.
It's not over the 3 meters.
Not over the 3 meters, that's right. But part of the preparation of the riparian plan would include provision for public access.
Right. Well, Mr. McLeay, there were lots of other things, but I don't really think that they're relevant now. You know, to do with the economic aspects and differences and what you took from that, etc. But that's not going to take us any further at this point. So, there was, just in terms of the structure of the plan, we did have a discussion on sort of the relativity between the rules and structure plan and the appendices and that sort of thing. Have you got a view on that matter?
I do.
You do.
So the Appendix S1, which is where these things sit, that doesn't have a lot of weight in my mind. It's more providing advice, and under PC 17, it was providing advice as to what needed to occur for this process that we're here today to talk about to be initiated. So I think that that's why I think that it is necessary to have a rule set that is sort of almost duplicating the provisions of that Appendix S1, so that there is a legal pathway for consideration of those requirements.
What would you say is the actual purpose of the appendices then?
My view is for it just to give information.
I mean, if the plan contains a sort of general guidance to the way land release, subdivision and development is to occur. I mean, does that exist anywhere in terms of trying to achieve some consistency? I'm thinking of Mr. Muldowney's submissions in that regard. Is that, you know, there's sort of, is there a body of material in the plan that I need to look at that provides for that consistency, so that when you're doing individual plan changes, I mean, we might be at the end of the line now because, as Mr. Chris advised, you know, this is, you know, the last piece of the puzzle. Any comment?
It certainly, a lot of those provisions were included via previous plan changes to bring in the growth strategy, Waipaha 2050, and to give some weight to that. It certainly provides a bit of explanation of what the growth strategy of council is all about, and that has relevance when you're considering different provisions, but not necessarily in determining specific consent categories when you're actually considering subdivision or development. So yeah, it's all useful background information, but I don't think it has the legal teeth to sit there on its own if you're going to be relying on it for a particular purpose.
So your advice is that I should be focusing on the specific rules that apply to that structure plan?
Yes. That's the way I've always viewed it, is that your primary provisions are your objectives, policies and rules.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. McLeay, and your alter ego there. Right. So as I understand, you want to make some closing comments and writing to come.
Brief comments in
Yes.
response to what we've heard today following the applicant's presentation. But I would like to follow up some brief reflections as well. So I think I want to address a couple of points that were made by Mr. Muldowney in his legal submissions, where he referred to a deal as a deal, and that the Karma Trust has not actively opposed the landowner group with their live zoning. When the discussion was had at PC 17 that resolved the issues, that agreement was understood by the landowner group and Mr. Crisp that the Karma Trust subdivision, the development, 80% would be done and dusted within 18 months. So that's just a bit of context for how that date arrived in the 80% in the rule that came into PC 17. Sorry.
Just to interrupt this, so that
I think the point I'm trying to make is that there's no deal that's been broken, other than the landowner group understood that the 224C point would be reached within 18 months of when the PC 17 went through. But things change, the planning regime changes, and anyone's entitled to make an application for a private plan change.
Yes, I mean, I think in the last hearing down here, I had some sort of advice as to sort of discussions and deals that have been struck. But I mean, really, from my point of view, it's what translates through into the plan provisions.
Exactly.
And any explanation that resides within the plan about those provisions, that's what I'd be taking on board. I mean, I simply can't go to even private legal memorandums. I mean, someone's going to have to argue about that somewhere else.
I completely understand that, sir. I just wanted to make the point because it is something that my client was concerned about. And the never opposing the live zoning. When the landowner group originally lodged a submission on Plan Change 17, that was actively opposed by Karma Trust and the council at the time on the basis it didn't have scope to that went through an objection process, and the commissioner upheld the objection, and the landowner group was able to pursue its submission. So that's just context, but coming to what really matters, the rule trigger, and whether or not an additional road vesting trigger is appropriate, and also the road vesting rule of 15.4.2 WW. The landowner group's position obviously remains the same, that that rule is necessary, and unless and until the existing subdivision has been granted consent on the conditions it has, unless that reaches 224C, that rule is needed. Because as Mr. Moran commented when he gave his evidence, whilst it might be unlikely, the current subdivision as granted could be surrendered and a new one applied for. So in my submission, that rule needs to stay. It's not redundant. And on rule 15.4.2 in the additional road vesting trigger, that is necessary to address any unforeseen circumstances arising in the future. I appreciate from the Section 42A author that he has confidence in the consenting team that they would nevertheless require the road. But in the absence of that being in that rule, something might change. And again, if there was to be some sort of fundamental change to the layout that is currently in the consented subdivision, there may be some means by which the 80% isn't achieved. If everything goes to plan under the current version of that consent and there's no more changes to it, that's great. But unless and until that happens, that trigger's not redundant, and neither is rule WW.
Could we be a bit more forensic about what might change?
There could be a Section 127 application that rearranges the staging, and that adds in more stages, and there's questions around whether 80%'s been achieved or not. The potential for withdrawal of I completely understand the point that's been made that, you know, the machinery's in there, it's getting developed at a pace. But that doesn't mean there might not be a further 127 change, and whether that does any kind of mischief to what's intended with that 80%. I can't come up with a scenario at the moment, but that's what the rule should be designed for, worst case scenario and the what if.
Yes, I mean, I can imagine what you're saying, like there is I don't know, a potential purchaser comes along and wants some different configuration, but as I understand, that can't take away the vesting of lot 101 as a road, can it? That variation
If that entire
couldn't do that?
subdivision, if the consent as it stands currently is surrendered, there's no lot 101.
Or even in a 127, apply for whatever you like.
Sorry, what was that?
In the context of a Section 127 application, you can apply for whatever you like. I've done multiple, I've done a lot of the big subdivisions in Cambridge, like St Kilda and Bridleways, and they have started out as multi-stage subdivisions. We have always been playing around with those, changing the staging, adding stages in, and that creates different outcomes. So that's why it's important that whatever happens is that road, that the integrity of that was in condition 29, the integrity of that is preserved, and having a rule helps achieve that outcome.
Right.
And I think the final point that I'd make on that is, what's the mischief of retaining that trigger? Because at the moment, yes, it's the 80%'s looking like it's going to happen under the current consent. So if that belts and braces additional trigger is included, what's the mischief? If the subdivision is going ahead as planned.
Right.
I think I'll leave it there for the time being, Sir, and I will capture that in some written.
Yes, yeah.
submissions.
I mean, just one more thing on that. I mean, you were saying, the last point you made was that there isn't any particular problem with redundancy. I mean, we do see plans where
Yes.
things are reinforced or doubled up on. I mean, Mr. Crisp, is that a sort of a good drafting approach? Or is it better to have a clear?
Cross references.
If we were, if this subdivision was completed, then absolutely you wouldn't put it in there because it would just be entirely retrospective. But there is scope for further applications. There is scope for amendment, but this very subdivision consent has already been the subject of one section 127 application, stopping it being the subject of another. Now,
Right.
I'm not saying that will happen, but it's just a case of if that does happen, then you've got a rule framework within which you're assessing that variation.
But the danger you're setting out there is that variation, for example, could take away the vesting of Road 101. And if I look at the rules, including WW, that's a variation you can't do because you would then be non-complying. You've still got to keep lot 101, don't you?
Well, you've got to keep some of it to service whatever lots needs to be serviced, but you can still apply for a consent for a non-complying activity. Karma Trust was granted a non-complying activity. That subdivision was a non-complying activity because it was not in accordance with the structure plan in terms of the position of the wastewater treatment plant. The wastewater treatment pump station.
All right. Well, no doubt you'll be covering this again in writing.
On that, in closing, I'll provide some, subject to discussion between planners, some
On the wording, yes. Is there anything else of that nature that needs to be canvassed?
I don't think so. I think we've made the point that any amendments that are made to the trigger rule would need to be followed through in the appendix, so there's consistency.
Right. Okay. Well, it's probably as well for me to get a complete, even though I know the wording's going to be mirrored. It's probably as well to have a complete set of changes as you would see them.
Yes. If it's acceptable to yourself, we can arrange for Mr. Crisp and Mr. Moran and Mr. McClay to have a discussion around that drafting, if that would assist.
That would expedite things, yes. Yeah.
Just to avoid a whole lot of rework, it might be just a case of we all accept, was it appendix 2 with the following changes, bang.
Yes.
Track changes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that would certainly expedite things if the planners can represent the parties in agreement on the wording. And then, I mean, anything else you've got by way of closing is your closing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if there's not agreement, you say this is what each party wants to suggest or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
That's on the understanding that rule WW stays, and if there's any amendments that are necessary to address stages of subdivisions, etc., then those can be made.
Right. Anything else, Mr. Scott? No? Okay. All right, so well, the hearing's adjourned, subject to the closing.
We'd probably better talk about when I will file those. I would be grateful for a couple of weeks because I've have some other commitments next week. No, I might be dead by then, Peter. It'll be this year. What are we thinking?
That's the 14th, isn't it?
Yes, 14th November. That'd be great. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you very much. Hearing's adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your input today. It's been very helpful.